Everyone thinks the most dangerous place to be is in front of a loaded gun. They're wrong. The most dangerous place is in the arms of a man who owns the city, right after you've lied to him. She crashed into his world with blood on her dress and a secret that could burn his empire to the ground. He caught her. He saw the marks. But when Michael O'Connor asked, "Who hurt you?" he wasn't offering to save her. He was asking who dared to touch his property. Welcome to The Devil You Know. Don't forget to like and subscribe for part 2. The air inside the O'Connor Hotel's grand ballroom was not merely air. It was a pressurized mixture of expensive perfume, old money, and the metallic tang of fear masked by laughter. Olivia Stone moved through the crowd, not like a guest, but like a ghost whose tether to the living world was rapidly fraying. The hem of her silver gown, stolen from a dressing room 3 blocks away, dragged slightly. It was too long, or perhaps she had just shrunk. Every breath felt like inhaling broken glass. She kept her left arm rigid against her side, clutching her clutch bag so tightly her knuckles were white, using the posture to hide the tremor in her hands. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere. According to the data wipe currently erasing her existence from the City Hospital database, Olivia Stone was already dead. "Champagne, miss," a waiter offered, thrusting a tray into her periphery. Olivia flinched. The movement sent a jolt of agony radiating from her ribcage up to her jaw. She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes that were scanning the room with the frantic precision of a trapped animal. "No, thank you," she whispered. Her voice sounded foreign, scratchy. She needed an exit. No, that was wrong. She needed him. Her vision blurred for a second, the crystal chandeliers overhead smearing into streaks of blinding white light. Adrenaline crash. Her medical mind diagnosed cold and clinical. Hypovolemic shock setting in. Internal bleeding probable. Estimated time until collapse. 2 minutes. She pushed forward, weaving through the tuxedoed bodies. She had to find Michael O'Connor. It was a suicide mission, but it was the only variable the cartel wouldn't account for. They expected her to run to the police, who were bought. They expected her to run to the airport, which was watched. They did not expect her to run straight into the lion's den of the city's most notorious industrial tycoon, the only man with a security apparatus lethal enough to hold back the wolves hunting her. "Target is moving toward the VIP riser," a voice crackled in an earpiece somewhere nearby. Olivia froze. She turned her head slightly. 2 men near the ice sculpture were looking right at her. They didn't look like O'Connor's private security. They looked like them. The Salamanca cartel enforcers. Chloe Martinez, the Salamanca's favorite blade, was likely close behind. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded Olivia's veins. She abandoned subtlety. She lunged forward, stumbling past a startled socialite who spilled red wine down her front. "Watch it," the woman hissed. Olivia ignored her. She saw him. Michael O'Connor stood at the center of the raised VIP section, a black hole in a room of shining stars. He was taller than the photos in the business journals suggested, his tuxedo tailored with an Italian precision that bordered on aggressive. He wasn't speaking to the circle of sycophants around him. He was merely existing, and they were orbiting. His face was a mask of bored cruelty, high cheekbones casting shadows over eyes that scanned the room with predatory indifference. Standing to his right was Jason Turner, his head of security, a man built like a tank turret, scanning the crowd for threats. Olivia took a step up the riser. "Ma'am, this area is restricted." Jason Turner's voice was a low growl. He stepped in her path, his hand raising to block her. Olivia didn't stop. She couldn't. If she stopped moving, the blood pooling in her abdomen would drag her down. She tried to sidestep him, her eyes locked on Michael. "Mr. O'Connor," she gasped out. Michael turned. His gaze landed on her, and for a second, the noise of the party seemed to vacuum out of the room. He didn't look surprised. He looked annoyed. "I don't sign autographs and I don't rescue strays," Michael said, his voice a smooth, deep baritone that carried no warmth. "Jason, remove her." "Please," Olivia choked out. She reached for him, a desperate, unthinking motion. Jason grabbed her arm, the left one. The pain was absolute. It wasn't just a bruise, it was a fracture site hidden beneath the silk. A scream tore from Olivia's throat, raw and animalistic, stopping the string quartet mid-measure. The room went silent. Jason, surprised by the intensity of her reaction to a simple hold, loosened his grip. Olivia stumbled forward, her momentum carrying her past the guard. She fell, not gracefully like in the movies, but heavily, her knees hitting the marble with a sickening crack. She landed at Michael O'Connor's feet. The world tilted sideways, the ceiling spun. She stared at the patent leather of his shoes. She had to say it. She had to give him the leverage. The microdrive," she whispered, her cheek pressed against the cold floor. "It's in the valve." Darkness rushed in from the edges of her vision. She felt a hand, large, warm and firm, grip her shoulder. She was hauled upward, but her legs refused to work. She was falling again, but this time she didn't hit the floor. An arm caught her around the waist, pulling her flush against a solid chest that smelled of tobacco and sandalwood. Her head lolled back. Through the haze, she saw Michael O'Connor's face inches from hers. The boredom was gone. In its place was a sharp, terrifying intensity. His hand shifted to support her neck, and as he did, the sleeve of her stolen gown slid down. The bruising was horrific. Deep purple and black mottling wrapped around her upper arm, overlaid with the distinct, circular burns of a cattle prod and the jagged slice of a defensive knife wound that was bleeding through the fabric. Michael stared at the marks. His jaw tightened, a muscle feathering near his ear. He looked from the wounds to her pale, clammy face. "Jason," Michael said. His voice was quiet, but it carried to the back of the room. "Clear the room." "Boss?" "Clear the room." Michael looked down at the woman limp in his arms. He didn't know her name. He didn't know why she was here, but he knew violence when he saw it, and he knew the signature of the marks on her skin. He leaned in close to her ear as her eyes fluttered shut. "Who hurt you?" he demanded, not with sympathy, but with the cold fury of a man who just found a scratch on his new Ferrari. Olivia tried to answer, but the darkness swallowed her whole. Consciousness returned to Olivia not as a flood, but as a slow, rhythmic beeping. Sinus rhythm, 72 beats per minute. Oxygen saturation 98%. Her brain processed the telemetry before she even opened her eyes. She was in a hospital. No, she couldn't be. If she were in a hospital, she would be handcuffed to the bed or dead. The Salamanca cartel had eyes in every ER in the tri-state area. She snapped her eyes open. She wasn't in a hospital. She was in a room that looked like a surgical suite designed by an architect who only worked in glass and steel. The walls were floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, a view that cost millions. The bed she was lying on was medical grade, but the sheets were Egyptian cotton. She tried to sit up. A sharp tug at her arm stopped her. An IV line. Morphine drip. "I wouldn't move if I were you. The internal fixation on your rib needs time to set." Olivia froze. She turned her head to the left. Michael O'Connor was sitting in a leather armchair in the corner of the room, reading a tablet. He had discarded his tuxedo jacket. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that looked deceptively strong for a man who spent his days in boardrooms. "Where am I?" Olivia asked. Her voice was stronger than before, raspy but functional. "Penthouse level, my private medical wing." Michael didn't look up from the screen. You have 3 broken ribs, a hairline fracture in your left ulna, severe dehydration, and a laceration on your thigh that required 14 stitches. You also had enough adrenaline in your system to kill a horse." He finally looked at her. His eyes were ice blue, intelligent, and completely unreadable. "Who are you?" he asked. Olivia swallowed. "I'm nobody. Nobody doesn't crash my gala wearing a $40,000 dress stolen from the cloakroom of the ambassador suite. Nobody doesn't have defensive wounds consistent with Krav Maga training, and nobody certainly doesn't whisper about a microdrive before passing out on my shoes." He stood up and walked toward the bed. The movement was predatory, silent. He stopped at the foot of the bed, resting his hands on the railing. "My head of security, Jason, thinks you're an assassin sent by the Triads. He wanted to tie you to a chair and pull your fingernails out until you talked." Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs. "And you?" "I think you're a thief," Michael said simply, "but a thief who stole from someone much worse than me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, silver object. It was a surgical scalpel. Olivia flinched, her body tensing to fight despite the pain. Michael noticed the reaction. A small, dry smile touched his lips. He began to clean his fingernails with the tip of the blade. "The bruises on your arm," he said softly. "The burn marks, those were made by a dual-prong stunning device, likely the X90 model, illegal for civilian use, favored by the Salamanca cartel enforcement squads." He looked up, locking eyes with her. "You stole from the Salamancas, and you came to me, which implies you think I'm strong enough to fight them off." "Are you?" Olivia challenged. Michael laughed. It was a dark, hollow sound. "My dear, the Salamancas deal in drugs and fear. I deal in infrastructure, politicians, and the flow of capital. They are butchers. I am the slaughterhouse owner. There is a difference." The door hissed open. Jason Turner walked in, holding a tablet and looking furious. He glared at Olivia with undisguised hatred. "Boss, we have a problem," Jason said, ignoring Olivia. "2 SUVs just pulled up to the service entrance, heavily armed. It's Chloe Martinez." Olivia gasped. Chloe, the woman who had given her the burns. "She says she's here to collect a fugitive employee," Jason continued, his hand resting on the gun holstered beneath his jacket. "She says if we don't hand her over, they start shooting up the lobby." Michael turned slowly to look at Jason. "Shooting up my lobby?" "Yes, sir." "On the night of the gala?" "Yes, sir." Michael turned back to Olivia. The look in his eyes shifted. The curiosity was gone, replaced by a cold, territorial aggression. "You brought a war to my doorstep," he whispered. "I can pay you," Olivia blurted out. "I have something they want, something worth more than drugs." "The microdrive," Michael guessed. "Yes, it has the names, the judges, the senators, the dirty cops on their payroll. It's the entire network. If you protect me, I give it to you. You can own them, all of them." Michael studied her face for a long, agonizing silence. He looked at the bruises coloring her skin, then toward the door where the threat waited. He tapped the scalpel against the bed rail. Clink, clink, clink. "Jason," Michael said, not looking away from Olivia. "Yeah, boss? Should I drag her down there?" "No," Michael said calmly. "Go down to the lobby. Tell Miss Martinez that if she scratches the paint on my walls, I will buy the bank that holds her boss's mortgage and foreclose on his life. Tell her the girl is mine." Jason blinked. "Yours?" "She's under my protection. If they want her, they have to go through the O'Connor Corporation. And Jason?" "Sir?" "If she pulls a gun, put a bullet in her head. I don't like being threatened." Jason grinned, a savage expression. "With pleasure." He spun on his heel and left. Olivia let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She looked at Michael, trembling. "Why?" Michael leaned in, bracing his hands on the mattress on either side of her hips, trapping her. His face was inches from hers. She could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. "Don't mistake this for kindness," he murmured. "You owe me now. You belong to me until that debt is paid, and I'm a very demanding creditor." He reached out and brushed a strand of hair away from her bruised cheek. His touch was shockingly gentle, at odds with his words. "Now, rest. You look terrible." The adrenaline of the confrontation faded, leaving Olivia in the quiet hum of the medical suite. But sleep was impossible. She knew the layout of cages. She had been in one for the last 3 years, forced to patch up cartel soldiers in backroom clinics. This penthouse was just a prettier cage. She needed to assess her position. Michael O'Connor kept her alive, yes, but he had explicitly claimed ownership. In the underworld, ownership was absolute. She swung her legs over the side of the bed. The pain in her ribs was a dull roar, manageable. She disconnected the IV line with practiced ease, applying pressure to the puncture site to stop the bleeding. She stood up, swaying slightly. She needed a weapon. She scanned the room. The scalpel Michael had been holding was gone. The medical cabinets were locked. She looked at the side table, a heavy glass pitcher of water. Crude, but effective. The door slid open. It wasn't Jason, and it wasn't Michael. It was a woman with sharp features, red hair pulled back in a severe bun, and a tablet clutched to her chest. She wore a tailored grey suit that screamed executive assistant, but moved with the silence of a cat. This was likely Hannah Price, Michael's notoriously efficient chief of staff. Hannah paused, looking at Olivia standing in the hospital gown, barefoot and swaying. "Mr. O'Connor prefers his investments to remain in bed until they are fully functional," Hannah said. Her voice was dry, professional. "I'm not an investment," Olivia snapped. "You cost us a security mobilization and a potential political skirmish with the Salamancas." "You are an investment with a high burn rate," Hannah countered. She walked over and placed a pile of clothes on the chair. "Put these on. He wants to see you in the study." "And if I refuse?" Hannah smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Then Jason comes back, and I don't think you want Jason to be the one dressing you." Olivia glared at her, then snatched the clothes, a pair of black silk sweatpants and a cashmere sweater. Comfortable, expensive, practical. 10 minutes later, Olivia was walking down a corridor that felt more like a museum than a home. Modern art hung on the walls, real Basquiats, not prints. The floor was dark mahogany. Hannah led her to double oak doors at the end of the hall. She knocked once, then opened them. "She's awake," Hannah announced, then stepped back, closing the door behind Olivia. The study was dimly lit, illuminated by the glow of a massive fireplace and a green banker's lamp on the desk. The smell of old paper and whiskey filled the air. Michael was standing by the fireplace, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. He turned as she entered. He had changed out of his tuxedo into a dark button-down shirt and slacks. He looked less like a king now and more like a predator at rest. "You disconnected your IV," Michael noted. "That's against medical advice." "I'm a doctor," Olivia said, her voice steady. "I know when I need fluids and when I need answers." Michael raised an eyebrow. "A doctor, interesting. The Salamancas usually employ butchers." "They forced me," Olivia said, the old anger flaring up. "They leveraged my brother's debt. I didn't have a choice." "Everyone has a choice. Some are just harder to make." Michael walked to his desk and sat down. He gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit." Olivia remained standing. "You turned Chloe away. Why?" "Because she was rude," Michael said dismissively. "And because I want the drive." "The drive is in a locker at Grand Central. Key 402. But you don't get the key until I have a guarantee." Michael leaned back, steepling his fingers. "You are in my house, surrounded by my guards, wearing my clothes. You are hardly in a position to negotiate." I have the location of the drive in my head. If Jason hurts me, or if you hand me over, the Salamancas get nothing, and neither do you. But if you help me disappear, really disappear, I give you the key." Michael studied her. He saw the tremor in her hands, the fear behind the defiance. But he also saw intelligence. She wasn't just a victim, she was a survivor. "I don't help people disappear, Olivia," he said, using her name for the first time. "I make them useful." "Useful? I have a specialized medical facility, off the books, for my employees who run into occupational hazards. My previous doctor had a crisis of conscience and had to be let go." Olivia felt a chill. "Let go?" Severed," Michael corrected smoothly. "I need a surgeon who is discreet, talented, and already dead to the rest of the world. You fit the profile." "You want me to work for you?" Olivia asked, incredulous. "I just escaped a crime syndicate. You want me to join another one?" "I am offering you a job, a salary, and protection," Michael said. He stood up and walked around the desk, stopping in front of her. The heat radiating from him was palpable. "The Salamancas will hunt you forever. They will kill your brother just to spite you. But if you are mine, if you are O'Connor property, they won't touch you. They know the cost of war with me is too high." He reached out and tilted her chin up. His fingers were rough, calloused. "Work for me. Heal my men. Keep your mouth shut. And I will ensure Chloe Martinez never breathes in your direction again." Olivia looked into his eyes. She saw the darkness there, the absolute control. It was a deal with the devil. But out there in the city were wolves who wanted to tear her apart. Here, at least, the monster had a code. "And if I try to leave," she whispered. Michael's thumb brushed her lower lip, a gesture that was possessive and shockingly intimate. "Why would you want to leave?" he asked softly. "You just got here." He dropped his hand and turned back to the fire. "You start tomorrow. Hannah will show you to your quarters. Don't try to run, Olivia. Jason has orders to break your other leg if you cross the threshold of the lobby." Olivia stood there for a moment, the weight of the cage door slamming shut, echoing in her mind. She had traded a quick death for a slow servitude, but as she looked at Michael's broad back, she remembered the way he had caught her, the way he had looked at her bruises with fury. For the first time in 3 years, she wasn't just prey, she was an asset, and assets were protected. "Fine," she said. Michael smiled into the fire. "Good choice." The facility, as Michael had called it, was not a dungeon. Dungeons were damp and dark. This was a marvel of stainless steel, shadowless LED lighting, and negative pressure ventilation. It was buried 3 floors below the O'Connor Towers parking garage, accessible only by a freight elevator that required a retinal scan and a voice print authorization. Olivia stood in the center of the main surgical bay, her hands scrubbed raw, snapping on a pair of latex gloves. The snap echoed in the silence, a sound as final as a gunshot. "He's losing pressure," she announced, her voice devoid of emotion. She was in her element now. The fear of the gala, the trembling victim who had collapsed at Michael's feet, that woman was gone. In her place was Dr. Stone, the trauma surgeon who had once patched up gangbangers in the back of a veterinary clinic at gunpoint. On the table lay a man named Russo, one of Michael's mid-level enforcers. He had been intercepted during a routine collection run. A serrated blade had opened his abdomen, missing the liver but nicking the descending colon. "Do not let him die," Jason Turner growled from the corner of the room. He was leaning against the reinforced glass wall, arms crossed, watching Olivia with the unblinking intensity of a raptor. "If you want him to live, stop breathing down my neck and get me 2 units of O-negative from the fridge," Olivia snapped without looking up. She clamped a bleeder with a force that made the metal click sharply. Jason bristled. "I'm not your nurse." "No, you're the head of security who let his man get gutted," Olivia retorted, her eyes locked on the open cavity of the patient. So either make yourself useful or get out of my sterile field. If sepsis sets in because you're shedding particulate matter everywhere, I'm billing his funeral to your pension." For a second, the air in the room grew heavy. Jason was a man accustomed to fear. He wasn't accustomed to being ordered around by the property. Slowly, Jason uncrossed his arms. He walked to the refrigeration unit, retrieved the blood bags, and slammed them onto the metal tray next to her. "One wrong move," Jason whispered near her ear, "and I'll show you what the Salamancas should have done." Olivia didn't flinch. She spiked the bag and hung it. Suction. For the next 2 hours, time dissolved. It was just the rhythm of the heart monitor, the hiss of the ventilator, and the delicate, brutal work of sewing a human being back together. Olivia worked with a terrifying efficiency. She cleaned, she sutured, she stabilized. She wasn't just fixing a body, she was proving her worth. In this world, utility was the only currency that mattered. When she finally stripped off her bloody gloves and washed her hands, her back ached with a familiar, dull throb. She turned to find the room empty of everyone except Russo, who was now stable and sedated, and Michael O'Connor. She hadn't heard him enter. He was standing in the shadows near the scrub sinks, watching her. He wore a charcoal suit, impeccable as always, but his tie was loosened. It was 3 a.m. "Jason says you have an attitude problem," Michael said. His voice was low, echoing slightly off the tiled walls. Olivia grabbed a paper towel, drying her hands methodically. "Jason has a competency problem. I just saved his man's life." "I saw." Michael walked forward, stepping into the circle of light. "You have good hands. Steady. I had plenty of practice on people who didn't want to go to the police." Olivia leaned back against the sink, crossing her arms. "Is this what my life is now? Living in a basement, fixing your broken toys?" "Ideally, my toys wouldn't get broken," Michael said. He stopped a few feet from her. "But business has been aggressive lately. The Salamancas are testing boundaries." Russo was a message. "They know I'm here," Olivia said, the realization settling in her stomach like lead. "That's why they hit him. They're probing your defenses." "They suspect," Michael corrected. "They don't know. If they knew, they wouldn't have used a knife. They would have used a bomb." He reached out, his hand hovering near her shoulder before he adjusted the collar of the oversized scrub top she was wearing. The gesture was possessive, a reminder of who owned the clothes on her back. "You need to give me the key, Olivia." "Not yet," she said, holding his gaze. "I'm safe down here, sure, but I'm not free. The deal was you make me disappear. This isn't disappearing. This is storage." Michael's eyes narrowed. "You think you have leverage. You don't. You have a head start. That is all." "I have the names," she insisted. "The judges, the senators." "I already own half of them," Michael said coldly. "I want the drive to crush the half I don't own and to destroy the Salamancas for daring to touch what is mine." He stepped closer, crowding her space. The smell of sandalwood and expensive scotch washed over her. "You're tired," he observed, his tone shifting from threatening to oddly intimate. "There's a cot in the break room. Sleep. Tomorrow we move you to the safe house in the Hamptons. The city is becoming complicated." Olivia blinked. "The Hamptons? Fresh air, ocean view, high walls," Michael listed. "And me." "You're coming?" "I'm the target, Olivia. Wherever I am is the safest place for you and the most dangerous place for everyone else." He turned to leave. "Get some sleep, Doctor. You'll need it." As the heavy steel doors hissed shut behind him, Olivia looked down at her hands. They were steady, yes, but for the first time in years they were shaking, not from fear of the cartel, but from the terrifying proximity of the man who had just saved her. The safe house was a fortress disguised as a modernist mansion, perched on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic. It was a sprawling structure of glass and white concrete, surrounded by 10 acres of forest and a perimeter wall topped with thermal sensors. It had been 3 days since the surgery. 3 days of silence. 3 days of Michael O'Connor watching her across dining tables that were too long, in rooms that were too quiet. Olivia sat in the library, a book open on her lap that she hadn't read a single word of. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the ocean churned, grey and violent against the rocks. No rain, just a relentless dry wind that battered the glass. She heard the heavy thud of the front door opening, followed by the murmur of voices. Jason's rough bark, Michael's smooth baritone. She stood up and walked to the doorway. Michael was in the foyer, stripping off a leather jacket. He looked exhausted. There was a smudge of dirt on his cheek, and he was favoring his right leg. He looked up and saw her. For a second, his guard dropped. He didn't look like the Mafia boss. He looked like a man who had just walked through hell. "What happened?" Olivia asked, stepping into the hall. "Corporate negotiations," Michael said dryly. He winced as he put weight on his right foot. Jason appeared behind him, looking grim. "It was an ambush. They hit the convoy on the LIE. We lost 2 cars. "Salamancas?" Olivia asked. "Who else?" Jason spat. "They're getting desperate. They know the drive is in play." "Enough," Michael cut in. "Jason, secure the perimeter. Double the guard on the gate. No one in or out." Jason nodded and vanished outside. Michael limped toward the stairs. "Let me look at it," Olivia said. Michael paused on the first step. "It's just a sprain. I'm a doctor. You're my employer. Let me do my job." Michael hesitated, then sighed. "Fine, my bedroom. 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, Olivia entered the master suite. It was vast, minimal, and masculine. Michael was sitting on the edge of the king-sized bed, his shirt removed, revealing a torso that was a map of scars. Knife wounds, bullet grazes, a history of violence written in pale, jagged lines on tan skin. But it was his leg that drew her attention. A nasty gash ran down his calf, bleeding sluggishly. "That's not a sprain," Olivia said, setting her medical bag down. "That's shrapnel." "A grenade," Michael admitted, watching her kneel between his legs. "Their aim was off." Olivia cleaned the wound with efficient, gentle strokes. The silence in the room was thick, charged with an electricity that made the hair on her arms stand up. She could feel his eyes on her, tracing the line of her neck, the curve of her shoulder. "Why haven't you run?" Michael asked suddenly. Olivia paused, tweezers in hand. She looked up. "There are guards at the gate with assault rifles. Where would I go?" "You're smart. You could have slipped past them during the shift change." "And go where? Back to the city? Back to waiting for Chloe to find me?" Olivia shook her head. She extracted a small shard of metal from his leg and dropped it into a metal basin. "The devil you know is better than the devil you don't." Michael let out a low laugh. "Is that what I am? The devil?" "You tell me," Olivia challenged. She began to stitch the wound. "You traffic in power. You kill people. You hold women hostage in glass houses." "I protect what is mine," Michael corrected. His voice dropped an octave. "And you are mine." He reached out, his hand cupping her cheek. His thumb traced the fading bruise under her eye. The touch was electric. Olivia froze. She should pull away. She should be terrified. But the adrenaline of the last few days, the proximity to death, had rewired her brain. "Why do you care?" she whispered. "I'm just a loose end." "You were," Michael murmured. "Now, you're a complication." He leaned down. Olivia's breath hitched. His face was inches from hers. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the war between the ruthless pragmatist and the man who wanted her. "The drive," he whispered, his lips brushing hers. "Where is the key?" The spell broke. Olivia pulled back, her heart hammering. It was always about the deal, always about the leverage. "Finish the stitching yourself," she said, standing up abruptly. She felt flush, embarrassed by her own reaction. Michael didn't move. He watched her retreat to the door, his expression unreadable. "Olivia!" he called out as she reached the handle. She stopped, hand on the brass knob. "They aren't just looking for the drive anymore," Michael said quietly. "They put a bounty on you. 5 million, dead or alive. Preferably dead." Olivia turned slowly. "Why?" "Because you know where the bodies are buried. Literally, you treated their men, you saw their faces. The drive is just data. You are a witness." He stood up, ignoring the pain in his leg. "That's why I keep you here. Not for the key, but because if you step outside those walls, you won't last an hour." Olivia looked at him, searching for the lie. She didn't find one. "Thank you," she said stiffly. "Don't thank me," Michael replied, turning his back to her to look out the window at the dark ocean. "Just survive." The attack didn't come with an explosion. It came with silence. 2 nights later, Olivia woke up to darkness. The ambient lights of the safe house, usually a soft glow along the floorboards, were dead. The hum of the HVAC system had cut out. She sat up in bed, her heart instantly racing. The silence was unnatural. She crept to the window. The perimeter lights were out. The forest beyond was a wall of black. Power cut, she realized. Hard lines severed. She didn't wait. She grabbed the jeans she had left on the chair and pulled them on, slipping into a pair of sneakers. She didn't have a weapon, but she had the scalpel she had stolen from the basement clinic. She had never returned it. She slid it into her back pocket. She opened her bedroom door. The hallway was pitch black. "Michael," she whispered. A hand clamped over her mouth. She thrashed, reaching for the scalpel, but a strong arm pinned her against the wall. "Quiet." Michael's voice hissed in her ear. She went limp. He released her slowly. Even in the dark, she could sense the tension radiating off him. He was wearing tactical gear, a Kevlar vest over his shirt, and he held a suppressed pistol in his right hand. "They bypass the sensors," Michael whispered, his lips brushing her ear. "Internal sabotage. Someone on my team sold the codes." "Jason," Olivia breathed. "No, Jason is dead. I found him in the control room." Olivia felt a cold shock. Jason, the tank, the immovable object, dead. If Jason was dead, they were defenseless. How many? 6, maybe 8. Elite team, night vision, silencers. They're sweeping the ground floor now. Michael grabbed her hand. His grip was bruising. "We have to move. The safe room is compromised. We need to get to the garage." They moved like shadows. Michael knew every creak of the floorboards. They descended the back staircase, the service entrance. Below them in the main foyer, they heard the soft thwip-thwip of suppressed gunfire. The remaining loyal guards were being executed. They reached the garage level. Michael scanned the corridor, then pushed Olivia behind a concrete pillar. "Stay here," he commanded. He moved into the open space of the garage. 3 black SUVs were parked there, but standing between them and the vehicles were 2 men clad in black tactical gear. "Clear," one whispered into a headset. Michael raised his weapon. 2 shots. Pfft, pfft. Both men dropped. Headshots. Clean. Instant. Michael waved her forward. "Go. Middle car. It's armored." Olivia ran. She reached the door of the SUV just as the stairwell door behind them burst open. "Contact!" a voice screamed. Bullets sparked against the concrete floor. Olivia scrambled into the passenger seat. Michael dove into the driver's side, turning the key. The engine roared to life, a V8 beast designed for this exact moment. "Get down!" Michael yelled. The rear window shattered as he threw the car into reverse. He slammed into the attacker standing in the doorway, the impact jarring the entire chassis. Then he shifted to drive, tires screaming as they peeled out of the garage. They hit the driveway. The gate was closed. "Hold on!" Michael didn't brake. He accelerated. The armored SUV hit the wrought iron gates at 60 miles per hour. Metal shrieked, sparks flew, and the gate buckled, flying open. They careened onto the main road, the darkness swallowing them. Michael checked the rearview mirror. "They're following. 2 cars." He looked over at Olivia. She was huddled in the seat, shaking, but her eyes were wide and alert. She wasn't crying. She was calculating. "The drive," Michael said, his voice tight. "We need it. Tonight. It's the only way to call off the dogs." "Grand Central," Olivia said. "Locker 402. We can't go to the city. They'll be waiting." "We have to," Olivia said. She pulled the scalpel from her pocket and set it on the dashboard. "Because the key isn't a physical key, Michael." Michael glanced at the scalpel, then at her. "What is it?" "It's biometric," Olivia said. "Retinal scan and a passcode. But the passcode, it changes every 24 hours based on an algorithm I wrote. And I'm the only one who knows the seed code. If I don't input it by dawn, the drive wipes itself. And then we have nothing." Michael looked at the digital clock on the dashboard. 3:42 a.m. "Dawn is in 2 hours," he said, swerving to avoid a deer, the headlights cutting through the night. He reached over and took her hand, interlacing his fingers with hers. His palm was sweaty, his grip desperate. "Then we drive fast," he said. "Welcome to the war, Olivia." Behind them, headlights appeared in the distance, gaining fast. The speedometer of the armored SUV buried itself past 110. The world outside was a blur of highway medians and darkness, punctuated by the angry flash of headlights in the rearview mirror. Michael O'Connor drove with one hand on the wheel, the other pressing a rag against his shoulder where a stray bullet from the garage ambush had grazed him. He was pale, sweating, but his focus was absolute. "They're gaining," Olivia said, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. She looked back. The 2 trailing SUVs were closing the gap, their engines roaring like hunting beasts. "They won't shoot," Michael gritted out. "Not yet. At this speed, a blowout kills us all, and they need the key in your head intact." "They'll try to box us in," Olivia analyzed. "Force us off the road. Let them try." Michael yanked the wheel to the right, taking the exit ramp for the Queens Midtown Tunnel at a speed that made the tires scream in protest. The SUV drifted, heavy and dangerous, before correcting. "We can't go to the tunnel," Olivia warned. "It's a choke point if they have a team ahead." "We aren't taking the tunnel." Michael slammed the brakes, spinning the wheel. The SUV skidded into the service entrance of an industrial shipyard just off the highway. He killed the lights. "Out! Now!" They bailed out of the car, sprinting into the shadows of the shipping containers, just as the pursuers roared past on the highway above, chasing a ghost. The shipyard was a maze of rusted metal and silence. The wind off the East River was biting, carrying the smell of salt and diesel. "My chopper is on the pad at the West Side heliport," Michael said, leaning against a container to catch his breath. "But we can't get there. The city is locked down by now. Chloe has eyes on every bridge and tunnel." "We don't need a chopper," Olivia said, checking his shoulder wound. It was bleeding, but not critical. "We need a train. The service tracks run under the river. I used to treat the transit workers. I know the access points." Michael looked at her, impressed despite the pain. "You want to walk to Manhattan?" "I want to live," Olivia corrected. "And right now, being underground is the only way to do that." They moved through the dark, Olivia leading. She found the maintenance hatch near the riverbank, hidden beneath a pile of discarded pallets. It was rusted, heavy. Michael groaned as he heaved it open, the sound of metal on metal screeching in the night. They descended into the damp, suffocating darkness of the subway service tunnels. The air was thick with dust and the ozone smell of the third rail. "You really are full of surprises, Doctor," Michael muttered, his flashlight cutting a beam through the gloom. "You didn't hire me for my personality," Olivia shot back, though she stayed close to him. They walked for what felt like hours, the distant rumble of early morning trains vibrating through the soles of their shoes. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. "Why?" Michael asked suddenly, his voice echoing in the tunnel. "Why what?" "Why didn't you sell me out in the garage? You could have grabbed a gun, shot me and waited for Chloe. She would have paid you for the drive." Olivia stopped walking. She turned to face him in the stark light of the flashlight. "Because she enjoys the pain," Olivia said softly. You just do what's necessary. And because when I fell," Olivia whispered, looking down at her muddy sneakers, "you caught me. No one has caught me in a long time." Michael stared at her. In the grime and the dark, with blood on his shirt and a gun in his hand, he looked more human than he ever had in his tuxedo. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. He didn't touch her, but the heat of him was palpable. "When this is over," Michael said, his voice rough, "if we survive, nothing goes back to how it was. You understand that? You aren't just an employee anymore." "I know," Olivia breathed. "Good." He turned and kept walking. "Come on, dawn is coming." Grand Central Terminal at 5 a.m. was a cathedral of silence. The morning rush hadn't started. The floor was polished to a mirror shine, reflecting the constellations painted on the ceiling, a fake sky for a city that never saw the real stars. Michael and Olivia emerged from a service door near track 34. They were dirty, disheveled, and dangerous. "Locker bank is on the lower level," Olivia whispered, "near the oyster bar." They moved across the main concourse. Their footsteps echoed loudly, too loudly. "Stop!" Michael hissed. He grabbed Olivia's arm, pulling her behind the marble information booth. "What?" "It's too quiet. Even at 5 a.m. there are cleaners. Security." He scanned the balcony levels. Nothing moved, but the air felt charged, static. "It's a trap," Michael realized. "They knew we'd come here. The drive is the only leverage we have." "We have to get it," Olivia said. "It wipes in 20 minutes. "I'll draw their fire," Michael said, checking the magazine of his pistol. "You make a run for the lockers. Get the drive, then run to the 42nd Street exit. My security team is regrouping there." "No," Olivia grabbed his wrist. "We do this together." Before Michael could argue, a slow clap echoed through the vast hall. They turned. Walking out from the shadows of the east staircase was Chloe Martinez. She wore a white trench coat, pristine and sharp, contrasting with the black leather gloves she wore. She held a suppressed submachine gun loosely at her side. Behind her, 4 men fanned out, weapons raised. "So romantic," Chloe called out, her voice bouncing off the marble walls. "The prince and the pauper, or should I say, the king and the thief." Michael stepped out from behind the booth, placing himself fully between Chloe and Olivia. "Chloe," Michael said smoothly, as if they were meeting for lunch, "you look terrible." "White after Labor Day?" Chloe smiled, a razor-thin expression. "And you look like you've been rolling in the mud, Michael. How the mighty have fallen." "Let her go," Michael said. "You want the drive? Take it." "But she walks." "Oh, Michael," Chloe tutted, "you know that's not how this works. She's seen too much, and honestly, she annoyed me." Chloe raised the gun. "Kill him. Keep her alive long enough to open the locker." The men raised their weapons. "Now!" Michael roared. He flipped the heavy oak table of the information booth, sending it crashing onto its side as a makeshift barricade. Bullets chewed into the wood, sending splinters flying. "Run, Olivia!" Olivia didn't run away. She ran toward the fight. She scrambled low, sliding across the polished floor toward the fire alarm on the far wall. "Get her!" Chloe screamed. One of the gunmen turned his aim toward Olivia. Michael popped up, firing 2 precise shots. The gunman dropped. Olivia reached the alarm. She didn't pull it. Instead, she smashed the glass with the hilt of her scalpel and ripped the wires out, sparking them together. She wasn't triggering the alarm, she was triggering the suppression system. The sprinklers overhead didn't just spray water. In Grand Central, the high-security zones used a chemical suppressant foam for electrical fires. A thick, blinding white fog erupted from the ceiling nozzles, instantly filling the concourse. "I can't see!" one of the gunmen yelled. "Move! Move!" Michael's voice cut through the chaos. He grabbed Olivia's hand in the whiteout. They knew the layout better than the hired guns. They sprinted blindly toward the lower-level ramp. They crashed through the double doors of the locker area. The air here was clear. "Locker 402!" Olivia gasped, her lungs burning. She ran to the metal bank. Her hands were shaking violently. "Michael, watch the door!" She punched in the code. Error. "Calm down," she told herself. "Think. The algorithm." She recalculated. Yesterday's date plus the atomic weight of lead. She punched the keys. Green light. The locker popped open. Inside sat a small black USB drive. "Got it!" she yelled. "Olivia, get down!" The glass of the doors shattered inward. Chloe stepped through the frame, blood dripping from a cut on her forehead. She looked feral. She raised her gun at Olivia. Michael was too far away. He was reloading. He wouldn't make it. Olivia stared down the barrel of the gun. She clutched the drive to her chest. "Goodbye, sweetie," Chloe sneered. Bang! Chloe's head snapped back. She stood there for a second, a look of absolute confusion on her face, before crumbling to the floor. Behind her, in the shattered doorway, stood Hannah Price, Michael's assistant. She was holding a smoking revolver with both hands, her face pale but determined. Behind her, a dozen O'Connor security guards flooded the room. Michael lowered his gun. He looked at Hannah. "I told you to wait in the car," Michael said, exhaling a breath he had held for 10 minutes. "You were taking too long," Hannah replied crisply. "And I had a meeting at 9. Michael turned to Olivia. She was slumped against the lockers, the drive clutched in her hand, tears finally streaming down her face. He walked over to her, holstering his weapon. He knelt down, ignoring the blood and the foam and the dead bodies. "It's over," he said softly. He gently pried the drive from her fingers. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the room. He didn't check the drive. He didn't put it in his pocket. He pulled Olivia into his arms, burying his face in her neck, holding her as if she were the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. "It's over," he repeated. The fallout was swift and brutal. With the drive decrypted, the data flooded the servers of the FBI, Interpol, and the major news networks simultaneously. It was a dead man's switch protocol Michael had activated the moment they returned to the penthouse. By noon, 3 senators had resigned. By 2 p.m., the Salamanca compound in Mexico was being raided by federales. The empire of fear that had hunted Olivia for 3 years was dismantled in 3 hours. Olivia sat on the terrace of the penthouse, watching the sun set over the city. She wore a clean dress, white silk this time, and her arm was in a proper sling. She heard the glass door slide open. Michael stepped out. He held 2 glasses of champagne. "To the victors," he said, handing her one. "To survival," Olivia corrected, taking a sip. She looked at him. The bruises were fading, but the intensity in his eyes remained. "So," she said, "the debt is paid. The Salamancas are gone. I gave you the drive." "You did," Michael agreed. He leaned against the railing, looking at her. "Does that mean I'm free to go?" Olivia asked. The question hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. She realized with a start that she didn't want the answer to be yes. Michael set his glass down. He walked over to her, stopping just inches away. "You were never a prisoner, Olivia. You were a necessity." "And now?" "Now," Michael said, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, "you are a liability." Olivia's heart stopped. "What?" Michael smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. It wasn't a cruel smile. It was warm. "You know my secrets. You know my codes. You know what I look like when I'm bleeding? I can't let you walk away with that information." He took her hand, his thumb tracing the pulse point on her wrist. "So, I have a counteroffer." "Which is?" Stay," Michael said. "Run the medical wing properly. Build a life. Stop running." "And what do you get out of it?" Olivia whispered. Michael leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. "I get to come home to the only person who knows who I really am and didn't run away." He kissed her. It wasn't the desperate, adrenaline-fueled kiss of the car chase. It was slow, deliberate, and claiming. It tasted of champagne and promises. Olivia closed her eyes and leaned into him. The city below them was loud and chaotic, full of danger, but up here, in the arms of the devil she knew, she finally felt safe. "Okay," she whispered against his lips. "I'll stay." Michael pulled back slightly, looking at her with satisfaction. "Good," he said, "because I already ordered new surgical equipment, and you have a patient." Olivia laughed, a genuine sound. "Who?" "Me," Michael said, wincing slightly as he touched his shoulder. "I think I ripped my stitches carrying you out of that subway." Olivia shook her head, smiling. She took his hand and led him back inside. "Come on then, boss. Let's see if you can take orders as well as you give them." The glass doors slid shut, sealing out the world, leaving them in their own private empire. She was the one woman he couldn't control, and he was the one man she couldn't escape. In a world of monsters, they found the only thing sharper than a knife: trust. The Salamancas are gone, but in Michael O'Connor's world, peace is just a pause between wars. Will Olivia regret her choice, or is she just getting started? If you enjoyed The Devil You Know, smash that like button and subscribe. Comment below, would you have chosen the money or the mob boss? Turn on notifications so you don't miss our next thriller, Her Secret Bodyguard. Thanks for watching.